Hi. Today I would like to speak about Parshas Shmini, and maybe eventually we might continue also to start the year Mitzvah. But there is a particularity that we find in Parshas Shmini that seems to be screaming to be looked at. On itself, the fact that there is a Yom HaShmini is in essence a Chidush from clearly from Moshe Rabbeinu. The whole Miluim that was performed in Parshas Tzav just before Yom HaShmini is all a tzivui from Hashem already in Sefer Shemos in Parshas Tetzaveh. So basically you can check in Parshas Tetzaveh, there Hashem explains to Moshe Rabbeinu exactly how he has to do the Miluim of Aharon and his sons in order to start the Mishkan to be inaugurated. So there are 7 days that continuously is written in the Tzaveh, and that is also how the Tzivui of Hashem was repeated in Parshas Tzav. But then it says, "Vayihi bayom hashmini kur Moshe laHaron ulevona v'leziknei Yisrael." And then he explains, "Vayomer laHaron kach lecho egel ben bokor lachatos," etc. And it's very interesting that actually the Yom HaShmini is not mentioned in Parshas Tzav and not mentioned in Parshas Tzav. In other words, it seems to be that the Parshas Shmini, the Yom HaShmini, in any case, this Yom Tov of Shmini, is actually an initiative that comes directly from Moshe Rabbeinu. It's not me saying that. There are others, Meforshim on the Chumash that are also pointing out to that point, and that is why you will see in that parsha that in nearly all the cases, when he says that they've done like was requested, they say Vayikro Tzivo Moshe. Then it says Kasher Tzivo Moshe in Pasuk Chof Aleph, and then he says Asher Lo Tzivo Oisom. It seems that here we have a specific day that actually was created by Moshe Rabbeinu, the special Yom Tov of the Yom HaShmini. We will find back the Yom HaShmini in Parshas Tazria, where there is a Tumas Yeledes, and then the woman is says to be Tumeo Shiras Yomim, Kemei Nidas Devoiso Titmo, and then he says, Uvayom HaShmini Yimol B'saror Losoi. So here again is a very strange connection where you see again the Yom HaShmini as being the source of the Tahara, which is the Mila of the human being. The Kabbalah very clearly explains the Yom HaShmini as referring normally to, like Shmini Atzeres, to be the day of the Achis Hayomim, the day that Moshiach will come. This is very clear also if you look in Sefer Bereshis. Every single day of the creation has a ending Vayihi Erev Vayivoker Yom Rishon, Vayerev Vayivoker Yom Sheni, or Yom Echot, sorry, and then Yom Sheni, Yom Shlishi, etc. There is one day that is not at all finished, and that day is actually the Yom HaShvi. When the Yom HaShishi stopped and the Yom HaShvi started, which was the Shabbos, it never ends up and saying which you would have expected when you look at the pattern that the Torah follows. That means, in other words, that the 7th day has not finished yet. So it has not been finished yet. We are still in the 7th day. This is the day where Hashem stops doing the tikkun that he was supposed to do, that he's done, or during those 6 days he separated light and darkness, and he separated the waters from the sky and the waters from the sea, and then he brought up the Yabosha, and then he filled them up with the suns and the stars and the moon and with the birds and the fish, and then with the animals and the humans. Well, that's and then he stopped. In other words, he left us to continue doing. And that is where we are today. We are in the 7th day of the creation. We are still in the middle of the 7th day of the creation, where our job is actually to continue separating, to continue doing the tikkun that HaKadosh Baruch Hu started and gave us as a partner in his creation to finish off. When the day will be finished and the Moshiach will come, or Moshiach ben Yosef or Moshiach ben David or whatever it is, the Achis Hayomim that we are talking, whether it's going to be the Olam Habo on this world or whatever it is, this is the final day of the Shabbos, and then we'll start a Yom Hashmini. So basically, even if let's assume that there will be a new Sefer that will be written in the Tanakh when Mashiach will come, this first Sefer that will be written, if there is a new Sefer, which we can assume there will be, because Nevuah will come back and the revelation will come back, and it says clearly that the celebrations of this new era will be even bigger than the celebrations of Yetzias Mitzrayim. So there is all elements that suggest that we will write a new book. That new book will be starting off with the very first posuk, which will say, Vayihi Erev, Vayihi Boiker, Yom Hashvi'i. And it's the end of the seventh day, and Vayihi by Yom Hashmini. So it will start of Yom Hashmini. And that is something that we human have as an obligation to bring that Yom Hashmini, to bring ourselves to Yom Hashmini. And how do we do that? By actually doing what we call a tikkun, by doing the tikkun olam that we have to bring, which is basically the tikkun is mainly in the sense of ethics, as we have discussed already before. The most important part of bringing the world to a perfected world is a world that is ethical, where chesed and rachamim, of course, reign, but where there is mishpat as well, where there is justice, and where the ethics is actually comes to the most optimal way. That is why also in the Aseret Dibros, there is mainly ethical issues, le sirtzach, le sinaf, le sana bereach, le shoker, all these elements, le sachmoit, le signoi, sorry, these are all elements that belongs to the Aseret Dibros, which are the core, as we saw also in Meseches Makos, when all the Tayag Mitzvahs, David HaMelech has reduced them to 11. There also it says the 11 mitzvahs that are referred to by David HaMelech are also 11, or at least 10 of them are mainly ethicals. It's about not bribing, not stealing, not lying, etc., etc. So it's clear that those mitzvahs bring us to the 8th day. But what are we going to do on the 8th day? And that's something which is very interesting. The 8th day is the day where what we can call the Kedusha reigns. In other words, while today we live in a world where basically the not Kedusha, the Chulin is what is feel comfortable. It feels comfortable and even pleasurable to eat and to have intercourse. These are all elements that we feel comfortable. But what we do not feel comfortable, which is a bit harder, is to feel uplifted, to feel beruchnius with the Kedusha, to meditate, etc. It's harder to do then, and then of course to eat. There is an interesting element that in the Beis HaMikdash, when you think about the Beis HaMikdash is actually, it's an object that comes from the transcendent world, that is actually coming from the world HaMachshovos, the world of concept that has been projected and has been built in this world. In other words, it's a foreign object that has been planted in this world, and where indeed the laws that are ruling over the land, over the world, over the universe, is actually not always valid in the Beis HaMikdash. First of all, Chazal teach us that when this Beis HaMikdash was at its fullest glory, there was no space. So you could have hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people in the Beis HaMikdash, and everybody would feel that he still has 4 amos in space around him. There is also no time. They would bake the lechem aponim on Friday, and they would take them off on the next Shabbos, 8 days later, and they would still feel as if it was baked yesterday, if it just came out of the oven. It would still fume and be crusty and fresh as it was during the time when it took them out of the oven. In other words, time was also not very much valid and did not have a role. Not only that, time is also different. They look at time, as the humans that are in the Beis HaMikdash look at time differently, while in the world, the time starts with the night, the day starts with the night, and then comes the day. In the Beis HaMikdash, it is the opposite. It starts with the day and it ends with a night. There are also limudim, the klolim, the midrash ator nidreshes bohen are also different in the Beis Hamikdash as it is outside of the Beis Hamikdash. There are certain examples like ein eseder chelosese sheba mikdash, which we don't find. Of course, there is eseder chelosese. There are also part of, I don't remember anymore which ones, but there are certain conditions, or there are certainly kodshim, actually leikuve. There are a lot of dinim that the ways the midrash ator nidreshes when are different in the Beis Hamikdash than they are in the world outside of the Beis Hamikdash. Sorry. So we see here something very, very interesting. So while in the Beis Hamikdash, the ruchnius, the machshava, is something which is reigns, that is comfortable, eating in the Beis Hamikdash, like, it feels a bit awkward. Like the halacha is that first the Kohanim have to eat, the Israel has to eat in Yerushalayim at least, but it is close to the Beis Hamikdash, and that feels a bit strange to everybody. It feels strange to do a ma'aseh of Gashmias in order to fulfill a mitzvah of Kedusha. That's basically if you want, it's a little bit of a pre-taste of how it's going to feel like on the Yom HaShmini. So the Beis Hamikdash is, in essence, a little space, but also it's a little time frame that we can feel of how is it going to feel when it's going to be the Yom HaShmini. So that's why the Yom HaShmini is actually a trailer. It's a preview of what is going to exist and how we are going to experience Kedusha on the 8th day after Moshiach, or whatever the time that Hashem will bring it on this world, where there will be an Isgalus Hashrina on this world. So, since the Beis Hamikdash is something that is, in essence, a foreign object that comes from above and has been planted on this world, as everything that has been transplanted, an organ that Rahman al-Islam was transplanted in a human body, we know that it is quite unstable, that certain things can move, that the body can reject, Rahman al-Islam, Chas v'Sholem, can reject this new organ. Similarly, also the Beis Hamikdash is very, very unstable. And that's why there is, of course, the threat continuously was the threat when the Beis Hamikdash was standing, that it will be rejected. Now, to understand a little bit, what do I mean with the world of transcendence and the world of machshava? There is a saying in Chazal, is a medrash that explains that the Beis Hamikdash HaShlishi will be a Beis Hamikdash of fire that will come down on this world. And there's a lot of difficulties in understanding what do you mean with Hamikdash of fire that will come down on this world, what type of fire, what is burning, etc. Now, there is, in philosophy, there is the world, there are already in the beginning of philosophy, in the Greek philosophy, there is always the big discussions that existed between Aristo, I think, and Plato about what is the real world. Is it the world of concept, or is it the world where the concept has been realized? So there is a world of conceptual thinking, a table, meat, human, and then you have people, a table which is a wooden plank with four how do you call them, legs of the table. And these are the tables on which I am now putting my laptop. And this is the real table. And then you have a concept, or is the concept real? And this is only a kind of a realization that nearly very much kind of tries to equal or tries to copy or to come close to as much as possible to the real concept, which is a concept of a table. But that's actually also true in what we call transcendence. Transcendence is the idea, the machshava, HaKadosh Baruch Hu has a machshava, and that machshava, he pronounced it in a word, and from the word comes out and is created into something which is real in the sense that we humans accept as real because it exists. Concept does not exist, the concept is, and then it becomes an existence through the Machshova Kodesh Baruch Hu, through his speaking. Why am I saying that? Is so basically that can answer, of course, the idea of having a Beis Hamikdash of fire, since the fire represents the concept. It's not something real, but it is a concept that will come down and will be built on this world. And of course, on this world, it will not be fire anymore, because it's going to be the abstract concept can also be seen as fire. In other words, not something tangible, something that you can touch or feel, but it is something that exists, and it's from an idea towards a realization, a projection on a world of 3D or three-dimensional world and space and time, etc. That is the understanding of why we say that the Beis Hamikdash is a fire. But what is even more interesting is that we see today, especially in the when somebody learns Zvochim and Menuchos, we see, and also in the psukim that will come in the next week's parshas, that we will have even mainly in we had in Kedushim, and then there are other places in the parshas where we speak about pigul of Chutz Lizmanoi and Chutz Lemkoimoi. The pigul as being a machshova, which is actually not explicitly written in the posuk, but the fact that most of the psulim that is in the Beis Hamikdash are psulim of machshova that are related to Chutz Lizmanoi and Chutz Lemkoimoi. So remember, the Beis Hamikdash is a place where the machshova has been realized into something which is concrete, but it still belongs to the machshova. It is a place that the Beis Hamikdash represents the world of machshova that is still up there. And so therefore, the whole idea, the whole psulim of a korban is mainly in the machshova. And also, like I explained, there is no time, there is no zman, there is no place, there is no mokoim, and so the pigul is a machshova chutz lezmanoi, chutz lemkoimoi, and that's something which represents the whole Beis Hamikdash. The Beis Hamikdash, the pigul, is actually to teach us that this world that you have just entered, when you make the shechita or the korban inside of the Beis Hamikdash, we have to realize that your machshova that is outside of space and outside of Zman is actually puzzles you. In other words, you have to realize that this is a place where space, Zman, and machshova is actually the core of the understanding of what the Beis Hamikdash is all about. Now, when we speak about Kedusha, the opposite of Kedusha is not necessarily Chulin. The opposite of Kedusha is what we call Tumah. There is Legabe Tumah, when a person is not allowed to become Tumah, there is basically, besides one exception, but the idea of Tumah normally is always related to Kochim. So if a person is Tumah, a person is allowed to be Metame himself, especially Yisrael, and even a Kohen is allowed to be Metame himself unless it is for a Tumah's mess. But generally, we're allowed to be Tumah. The only problem that we have with Tumah is if it is regarding the Kochim and regarding the Mikdash. You're not allowed to eat Kochim, not allowed to go into the Mikdash. So the opposite of Kedusha, the ones that is the most, how do you say, the opponent that does not allow it to be mixed together is actually the Tumah. That is why after the Yom HaShmini, which represents the ideal world where Kedusha is, and we already here are experiencing it in the small few hundred square meters of the Beis Hamikdash, and also through the Kochim, through the Korbanos, the idea then starts the definition of what Tumah is. Because Tumah is the opposite of the Beis Hamikdash. Tumah, there is no Tumah in the world of Chulin. There are some exceptions, and these exceptions need to be evaluated, because there is an exception, of course, that there is a behemoth male that Israel is not allowed to eat, but that's also because we kadishtem v'isem kedoshim, says the Pasuk. So because we, the Jewish nation, have a certain Kedusha that is Kedusha that differentiate us from the other nations. And also the fact that similar is the fact that a Jewish man is not allowed to have intercourse with a nidor, which is also a tumah, which is in the intercourse in this case is also kind of a kedusha, or you can say that the Israel that is not allowed to have intercourse is because he is a Israel again, and like a Kohen is not allowed to marry a Grusha, and a Kohen Gadol is not allowed to marry an Almona. So therefore, the idea is that Israel is not allowed to have intercourse with a Nidor. And this is just a little kind of a pre-taste of what is going to be in the Yom Hashmini, where once the Kedusha becomes part of the norm, the chulin will become kind of an unpleasant, will feel like a stranger. And this is the Ramchal in Das Tvunos explains that in this world the guf feels comfortable, but the neshama feels a stranger. But in the world that we'll have in Achis Hayomim, it's the opposite. The neshama will feel comfortable, but it's going to be the guf that will start to feel like a stranger in a world of Kedusha. And so this is basically the whole understanding of the why the Tumme and Tahara and Kodshim are not mentioned in the Aseret HaDibros, and are also not mentioned in the 11 mitzvahs that David HaMelech has written down. Although there are Chiyuv Kores, Chiyuv Misa, there is so many punishment, and there are so many times that Hashem warned us not to do it, and gave us a lot of warnings on the element of sinning when it comes to Tumah and Kodshim, is because it does not help. This does not necessarily help to bring us to the Yom HaShmini. Because what we are doing is we are just motivating ourselves, we are training ourselves so that we should be ready to the famous Yom HaShmini. So basically it is not in itself important for this world, it is more important for the world to come. And what we are doing now is a little preview. So if you want, there are actually 3 types of mitzvahs that we can identify in the Taryag mitzvahs. You have the mitzvahs which are related to the Tikkun Olam, which are the ethical laws, which are the ones that are particularly in the second luchos of the 2 luchos. So in the second one, the second luach, it says Delo Sirtzach and etc. All the Benodem Mechaveros. That's the element of the Tikkun. And then you have the element of a pre-taste, a training, a little hint that we are giving to the world, to be understanding that we are going to a world where the Kedusha will reign, and therefore one has to refrain from being Tumah and connecting with the Kedusha. And then there is a third mitzvah, which Levinas explains, are the ones that are related to rituals, which are related to how the things that we are doing in order to prove our relationship that we have with Hashem, who strengthens our relationship that we have with Hashem. It's about caring and loving. It's about a relationship like a husband to a wife, or a wife to a husband, where you are performing deeds, you are buying flowers, which not necessarily are ethical thing to do, but they are strengthening the relationship that you have. There is a very, very interesting concept that I've heard, which actually explains our obsession that we have today with halacha, especially with particular halachas. We are so obsessed with the fact if we have a kezayis or not a kezayis, the Chaim Noah shir or the Chazon Ish shir, or whether these are 7 tfochim or not, how big they are, and etc. Or the kezayis b'chdei achilas pras. All these elements that obsesses us terribly, whether we have davened 1 minute before the shkia, after the shkia, lighting candles, before plug, after plug. These are strange things, but actually it is a very normal thing, because originally in the beginning we don't find that. So this is something that the Torah Shebal Peh has instituted, but originally we don't find in the Torah any discussion of this kind of thinking in halachic discussions with a novi, between a melech and a novi, between a person and a novi. We don't find it. Now, it doesn't mean that we don't find it, that it wasn't, but the idea is that when you start off a relationship in the beginning of a marriage, the passion is extremely high, and so therefore both partners, they forgive and they don't expect a lot from the other. So a little glitch in the relationship, in his act, are actually forgiven and not even seen by the other partner. But as relationship grows and it becomes normalized and it becomes intensified, as not anymore passionate, but it is purely out of love and care, in that case, every little meisim, every little act that you do or that you don't do has a very important meaning. The fact that you forget to buy flowers on the anniversary becomes very important, unless you can still buy it until the shkia of that day, or maybe the plug, or maybe a Tzesa Kochovim. I don't know. That's already depends on how the wife is looking at it. But that basically every little detail, whether you put your cup, just you leave it on the table, or you put it in the dishwasher, this putting in the dishwasher is an extremely important sign and a proof of love that you have, of caring for your wife. And therefore, all the little details that you are doing during the day, a little message that you send, is extremely, extremely important. Although in the beginning of the marriage, it was not necessary, because the feeling was there was an excitement. As we grow older and we actually going away from the day of the marriage, on the day of the wedding, as we go away, this is actually the passion goes down. But what is important now are the deeds, are becoming the concrete deeds that you are doing to show and to strengthen the relationship that you have. Similarly, all the rituals that we perform, the Moide Ani, the Negel Wasser, the davening Shachas, the Brochas, etc., all these elements that we are doing, which are so detailed and they are so particular, and if you say it in a different nusach, it's not like the Matbeat that the Chachomim gave us, it's not yoitz, you have to do it again. All these elements are because the relationship has come to a point where details are starting to count and the meisim are starting to count, and it is through the meisim that you can show your caring and your love and your fear and your wanting to create a good relationship that has become at the core of the of what you are doing. So in essence, that is, if you want, the reason why there are, and basically, therefore, you have, these are the three categories of mitzvahs that we find in the Torah. One of them is the core, which is the most important one, is to live an ethical life. The second one is kind of the Tumet Tahara, which does not belong in the core, but is actually kind of a preview, pre-taste. It is a preparation, it's a training to what is going to happen on the particular Yom HaShmini. And then you have the rituals, which are the basic halachic understanding, halachic, not understanding, but the halachic elements that are proving and that are consolidating and that are giving a sign of the caring and the loving of this relationship that we have with Hashem. If you want, there is another viewpoint that you can have specifically to understand that is the chakira, that whether or not tumah is something real or it's only an anhoga. The Rambam counts for all the tumahs, all the avat tumahs, he counts them as a separate mitzvah zaseh. Now he says himself, of course, it's not meaning that it's a mitzvah assay to go and be metame, but he says that all the other tumors, since they are the source of all the tumors, they are all separate mitzvah assay. The Ramban asks the question, what do you mean? Why should it be a mitzvah say? Basically, there is you would not count all the mumim, for example, that a person is not allowed to have, or Kohen is not allowed to have in order to enter the Beis Hamikdash, or a mum that you're not allowed to be makrev, a behemoth that has a mum and not allowed to be makrev as a korban. This you won't count them all of them separately as a mitzvah say. So what's the difference? Because for the Ramban, tumah is already today a reality. For the Rambam, tumah is not yet a reality. The tumah is only an anhoga, because it is only a preparation. It is something that we as humans have to live it. We have to live the tumah, but it's not that there is kind of that you could get from heaven glasses, that these glasses would teach you, would tell you this is tumah and this is toher. This is, according to the Rambam, does not exist, because the tumah is only an anhoga. Kedusha is also only an anhoga. That's why he has a separate mitzvah say for bechor, kaddish called bechor. He has a separate mitzvah say for chatas, shlomim, etc. Because those are mitzvah says that are actually defining, that we have a mitzvah say as humans to define a kedusha, to define tumah, but they are not real in the world of the Rambam. They are only hanhogas. We have to behave as if they were real. And the way that I explain you now is because they are today not yet real, but they will be real in the Yom HaShmini. In Yom HaShmini, they will be concrete. They will really exist because the Kedusha will be real. Today, the Kedusha is not real and is focused mainly in the little Beis Hamikdash. There, eventually, it might be real. I'm not sure. That is something that is debatable in this context. But in any case, this is the Rambam's viewpoint, which I would like to share with you. And interestingly, that also in Tumah, the Das, the Machshova, is very important. We are just learning today in the Daf Hayomi on Shavuos that the Korban Oil of Yoret, which are you have to bring for the Tumas Mikdash VeKedusha, it's all about Yesh Bo Yediyah B'Tchila, Yesh Bo Yediyah B'Sof, and then there's all Shilas, Ein Bo Yediyah B'Tchila, Yesh Bo Yediyah B'Sof, Yesh Bo Yediyah B'Tchila, Ein Bo Yediyah B'Sof. What are the kaporos, and why are all those korbanos that we bring on the Regolim and Rosh Chodesh are for the Tumas Mikdash VeKedusha? Because these are korbanos, and their korbanos are mainly about Kedusha. And Kedusha is mainly busy with Tumah. And so therefore it makes sense that like Kedusha and like Tumah, like Kedusha is something which has b'machshova, and the Tumah is a machshova as well. In our mind, this has to be Tumah. Therefore, if you don't have a Yediyas HaTumah, it's not a sin, the same sin as something which had a Yediyas HaTumah. Because if you don't have Yediyas HaTumah, then it means, in other words, that it is not Tumah. Because it's not a real Tumah, but it is mainly kind of an Hanhoga. But this Hanhoga is only valid as long as we know. If we didn't know at all, there is no Tumah. There is also an Aloha Moshe Messina legabe Tumas HaTohoim for legabe the Korban Pesach, but this is something that is not the purpose of today. But there also a Tumah that nobody knew about, and you touch this tumah, and you brought a korban pesach. The korban pesach is kosher because it's a tumah that nobody knew. What's the difference if somebody knows or somebody doesn't know? Now you know, but no, because it is only an anhoga. It is not a reality. It is something which is only for us humans. Therefore, the machshova, the idea of the humans, is what creates the tumah. Similarly, the kedusha. And the machshova is not on this world. The machshova is more important in the Beis Hamikdash. It's where the machshova reigns. Everything is the machshova, where the avodah, the eating, and the lighting of the menorah is uncomfortable. Is a foreign. It feels foreign in any case for anybody that thinks what the Beis Hamikdash is, and then suddenly to see that we bring food for the Rebbeinu Shalom, we create smoke and ketoros for him to smell. This does not seem right. It seems something which is a foreign in the world of machshove, where you would rather expect in the Beis Hamikdash to have more time and places to contemplate, to think, to maybe sing or whatever it is, things that actually are stimulating the machshove and the das. So maybe we take to the geule shleimo b'meiro v'yomeinu amen.